Hello again. It's time in the course of this project to create the logo. Here we go. This guy. And the reason I'm covering it as a separate video is because there's more to it than a simple dot. A number of English brands used an inlaid dot or pattern of dots, and that's really very little more than just drilling a hole and stuffing something in it. In this case, we've got varying materials hardness and some other things to deal with, and we'll just start at the beginning. You wonder what the crisscrossy stuff is here. That's some 1/16 and some 1/8, I'm sorry, 1/8 and 1/4 inch masking tape. And the purpose is to get a geometric, using the shape of the pipe to get us dead center on these things. Now you only get one chance to drill a hole, of course. And if you're off just a little bit, you'll see it from a mile away and you'll regret it forever. Every time you see it, you'll cringe. And it turns out that for reasons of human physics, it's more difficult to find the center of things than you would think. Talk to any optometrist type, vision specialist, and they'll tell you that the majority of the population suffers from some degree of something called astigmatism, which means what looks correct and aligned to your brain in reality is not, because of variations in your lens of your eye, in the shape of your eyeball. So anyhow, it's harder than it sounds to get something centered. In fact, if you look carefully at probably every pipe you've got, you'll find that there's some variation or deviation on the spacing of things or the centering of them. And on a round stem, it really doesn't matter a whole lot if it's a few degrees off, because the angles of rolling it around, you can't really see it unless you try to find it. But if you're dealing with something that's a flat area that's square and you don't have something in the middle of it, it's going to jump out. Anybody will be able to see it at a glance. So it's especially important to do it in this case. And taking a ruler and holding it down and going from corner to corner and making lines and stuff with a pencil introduces more complication. You've got the thickness of the ruler, you got the sharpness of the pencil, the offset that you need to put it to be able to draw the line, and then never mind hold three objects simultaneously in alignment while you do the line sketching. And that's frustrating. It can be done, of course, but it's not easy. And this is much simpler, this method I've got here. Now, I decided to offset this slightly toward the rear for visual balance purposes. You actually don't want something dead center front to back. You do want it dead center left to right. So this piece of tape here is an offset that serves as the functional surface area, everything to the bowl side of this line. And then you just put a piece of tape from corner to corner, and where they cross is exactly within a fraction of a thousandth of an inch where it needs to be. And then you just take a tool like this one and make a little tiny ding there. And when you are drilling, you use a sharpened, something equivalent to this. You chuck it in the drill and then move it around until you get exactly where you want to go. So that's how you drill an accurate hole. Now, specifically this Ashton, I think that Bill Taylor had another joke in mind when he came up with his logo, that a little piece of every pipe he made was going to have a Dunhill lineage, so to speak. A little piece of Dunhill is in every Ashton. I'm pretty sure that's what he was thinking. The reason is this aluminum ring, the circular silver part there, happens to be one of these. And I've got a shoebox full of these. They're the Dunhill inner tubes, and their brand of pipe for over half a century was sold with these things, and you could buy them in little paper sleeves for a nickel a piece or whatever it was, and it was an alternative to cleaning your pipe with pipe cleaners. You just waited till one of these got gunked up and you threw it in the trash and put in another one, and it was successful, worked well, all that. And it's just there were zillions of them at the time, and I don't know that Dunhill still does them that way. Maybe some models, I don't know. Anyhow, that happens to be the same diameter inside and outside as Bill Taylor's emblem. So we're going to get drill a hole that is 0.135, find a drill bit that's 0.135, and do just what you think. You drill it down about 5-30 seconds, I'd say, and then you're going to have a bit of fun. And one of the reasons I wanted to mention all this specifically is, okay, so now you've got a stem with a piece of aluminum tubing sticking out of it. And how are you going to, after you've glued it in there, how are you going to cut that off? Because you can't clip it with like wire snippers, you'll collapse the tube. A tubing cutter, one of those spinning things, won't get close enough to do you any good. If you try to grind it off, it's aluminum. Heat conduction 101 there. It'll get hotter than you can believe in a very short time, and potentially as you're pushing, let's say you clipped it off to 1 inch long and you're trying to shorten it by pushing it against a sanding belt or something on a belt sander or disc sander, it'll get so hot so fast you won't believe it. And then the torque, the leverage, or well, that'd be torque, against the tube will heat and stretch the hole, and you'll get a kind of an egg-shaped hole of the tilted tube. And if you, years and years ago, I found this out the hard way. So to save you guys the hassles of trying to figure out how to get rid of that extra length of tubing. Now, wait a minute. You could grind it if you wanted to spend half an hour doing it, just a tiny bit at a time, and let it cool a little more, let it cool a little more, that kind of a thing. But much better is just find yourself one of these hobby saws, and the kerf is non-existent. They're razor thin, and you can just get up within a millimeter or so and saw right through them and slice them off. So that's what you want to do there. And then once that is done, get it down so that there's just a tiny, tiny bit of the tubing above the level of the rubber, maybe a third to a half a millimeter. And then you need the wooden part, the center of the logo, and this is how you do that. Nothing more than a cordless electric drill that had a piece of briar chucked into it like a drill bit, and it's self-centering by the nature of physics. You just get a chunk of wood in there, and if you're steady-handed and spin and turn it against a belt sander, you'll take it down to whatever size you want. And if you're, again, this requires a steady hand, but that's the reason people send stuff to you instead of do it themselves. You figure these things out, and you get it to where it's a snug slip fit. And that obviously cuts off very easily with a little saw. and then you sand the entire thing to level. So you don't need to watch me drill a hole that's 5 30 seconds deep, so I'm not going to film that process, but I'll go ahead and get some amount of this done, and if I think it warrants it, any special operations, I'll record them. Otherwise, when on the next installment, there'll be an emblem, a logo in the stem, and we'll move on from there. Alrighty.